First, I want to say thank you to Cal, Jill, Christian for having us. This is awesome. This is awesome. This is my domain. I'm pretty familiar. Actually, this whole place, I'm pretty familiar with this stuff. Feel right at home. My name is Carlos. I've been doing leatherwork for 23 years. I started this business 23 years ago, 2000. The original name of it was lostbuckaroo.com, and then I adopted the name BuckarooGear just because it was a little bit more fitting. The Lost Buckaroo thing, people didn't understand it. You're lost? What? It was something I came up with 23 years ago and wasn't really a marketer at the time. So BuckarooGear kind of is a lot more fitting. I specialize in building chaps, chinks, armitas. That's the main portion of my business. That's what I do. I ship stuff all over the world. Been doing that for about 20 years. I think probably the first thing I want to talk about is just probably general leather care and the different types of leather. Yes. Some of you guys have already asked me. I don't know where she is. She's not here. You guys probably all live in, well, you guys live in different climates. So you got humid, wet, you've got dry, which is pretty much here. If your leather molds, it's actually a good sign. It means that your leather is not too dried out and it's still got nutrient in it for the mold to grow on. So your leather still has, I mean, you've still got some sort of tannins and oils in the leather. Now it happens everywhere, no matter, anytime you're in a wet climate or environment, your leather's gonna grow mold so long as it has that some nutrient or still has some oil, something for it to grow on. If it doesn't, that's when you're in trouble. Your leather's way too dry, it's cracked, it's on its way out. So leather is no different than our skin. And when I'm talking about this, for the purpose of this conversation, the type of leather I'm talking about is generally your skirting leather, which is what your saddles are made out of. Anywhere you see a stamp or carving is going to be a skirting type leather. The other type of leather I'm talking about is latigo leather. So latigo leather, you'll normally find latigo leather when it's used as some sort of a strap, because latigo leather has really, really high tensile strength, and you can use it in a very thin width and still have the strength. That's why most of your boot laces are made out of latigo, really thin stuff. And then the other type of leather would be harness leather, which you probably don't see much of because we don't work with harness horses or do harness kind of stuff. But harness leather is very similar to like a veg tan leather, but it's got different tannins and different properties in it, a lot more wax in it. And was imparted in the leather when they tanned it at the factory. So those three types of leather are what you'll find mold on. You generally won't find mold on chap leather. The chap leather is tanned in a different process and it just doesn't have the oils and things in it that mold can grow on. For mold, cleaning up mold, you want to use like a solution of, I think it's 1 part vinegar, 2 parts water, or 3 parts water in a spray bottle, and that vinegar will kill the mold. Once you get that mold killed, you can clean it off, toothbrush, rag, whatever you need, let it dry out, and then you got to put some sort of a conditioner back into the leather because the leather's going to dry out anytime you add water to it to clean it, right? So, like I said, it's no different than our skin. When our skin gets too dry, what do? Put lotion on it, right? So lotion for leather would be like a neat's foot oil, some sort of a conditioner like Lexol. But I generally don't use those products. What I use is just olive oil. I used to use neat's foot oil a lot, but then it got hard to find and it's very expensive. Yeah. And you'll see people, they talk about 100% pure neat's foot oil. I really don't know what that means. I don't even know what is a neat's foot. I don't even know. So it's real easy to just go to Walmart and get a bottle of olive oil and that's what I've been using. So we want to talk about different parts of the saddle, different things to look for. Just being a leather crafter, and what I look for, or what I always notice on saddles, is maintenance issues. How many of you guys do a pre-flight check before you get in the saddle? Pre-flight check meaning, do you check your gear and make sure it's all up to snuff before you get on? So your main wear points on a saddle, which are often neglected, are going to be the areas that are in contact with the horse and the sweat of the horse. So the sweat of the horse is what is going to dry out and crack your leather. And with that being said, a lot of times the leather that's going to knowingly be in contact with the horse is going to be a latigo leather, because latigo leather has more properties imparted in it when it's tanned to resist the sweat. Along with that, there's this thing right here called a cinch hobble that gets a lot of sweat on it. And you're going to want to make sure that this cinch hobble is in good working order, because if that breaks, what happens? Yeah, you have a rodeo, you have a flank strap, which is what they use to get horses and bulls to buck at the rodeo, flank strap. So you want to make sure you check that. And then obviously the other big one is your latigo. A lot of people don't look at probably one of the most important parts of the latigo, because they don't generally see it, because your wraps are covering it. It's this first fold over on the rigging. Yep. Pull that out of there. If you have this style of hardwood D or any kind of other D, pull that out of there and check it. Make sure it's not super thin, make sure it's not cracked, and make sure it's in good working order. You don't want that to break. Anytime a piece of latigo leather or latigo in general starts to get worn out, like you can fold it over, see how this is in really good shape. But if you fold it over, crease it like that and squeeze it and it starts to crack, it's time to just replace it. Don't even take chances.
You can't condition that or anything like that if it's cracked?
With latigo leather, it's a consumable. You can condition it. Don't get me wrong, you can condition it, but once it starts to crack like that, it's not worth your life, right?
What's the best way to clean the sweat off the rear cinch?
So there's glycerin saddle soap. You can use water and a sponge. Just anytime you lather it up, clean it up, let it dry out, and then put your conditioner back into it, whether it's like a Lexol, like I said, or olive oil. Like on a tooled saddle like this, what I would do if I were to clean it all together is I would get an air hose. If you guys have access to an air compressor and a nozzle, try to blow as much dirt and dust out of it as you can. And then you could go and, like I said, the areas that are in contact with the horse, you want to clean, get that sweat and that salt from the sweat off the leather first, and then you can recondition it. On something like this, especially if it's like a really fancy flower carved, hand tooled saddle where dirt and grime and dust can really get in there, you might want to go after it with like a toothbrush before you squirt it down with an air hose, so you can loosen up some of that dirt and grime. Most of you probably don't ride in the rain. I'm assuming. So you don't have to worry about that, or mud. You guys ride?
Yeah, I ride in mud.
So if you ride in the mud, that's the same thing. Wait till it dries, then you can try to break it off of there. Break it up with a toothbrush, or like not a real coarse bristle comb, something like that. And then you can blow it off, and then if you need to get it re-wet again or loosen it up some more, you can do that. But then after it dries out, you put your oils back into it, or your conditioner.
I was always told not to condition your latigo leather. Has that changed, or?
I don't think you should be worried about not conditioning it.
Okay.
No. It's leather just the same as, you know. Generally, if you're worried about taking care of it, you're on the right track. So there's not a whole lot of hard and fast not to rules, except for don't go out there and squirt it down with a hose and just go to riding it again. The other thing I would look at is down here where your stirrup leathers fold over, the bolt on your stirrup. That's another fold back area, and sometimes it's hidden and it doesn't see conditioning. So you want to make sure you take all this apart and get in there and really look at it. That's not something you would do before your pre-ride, but whenever you go to clean up your saddle and condition it, you want to make sure you take all this stuff apart. You don't have to take your wraps off of here, but take your stirrup hobble off and get in there and make sure, because there's areas in here where dirt and grime and horse hair likes to live, and it can just grind into the leather. And you'll see that's a spot where a saddle will wear out first. It'll also wear out where the stirrup leather goes over the saddle tree bar up in here. I wouldn't be too worried about jacking things up in here and trying to get underneath there to look at stuff. If a saddle maker saw you jacking up the seat jockey like this, he'd be really upset with you, because they work real hard on getting everything tight and to lay right. But I would get in there with the air hose and try to blow any grime out, and then also try to get in there with your sponge or something when you're ready to condition it with oil. If your saddle is really, really, really far gone, just take it to a saddle maker that's willing to clean it for you, because what they'll do is they'll take these strings off, they'll take these screws off, they'll peel back the saddle seat and get down in there. They'll take the stirrup leathers completely out and either replace them or condition them and really oil them for you.
Should you pull the fenders out a couple times a year, like pull them?
Yeah, you certainly can. Just be careful not to pull them all the way out, because it can be a chore to get them back over that saddle bar where the stirrup slot is. Yeah, but you certainly should, because again, that's where that stirrup leather is going over the bar is another wear area, and if dirt and grime gets up in there, it can just grind into the leather. A cinch is pretty visible, like a front cinch, or some people call them a girth. That's pretty visible. You can see if that thing's wearing out. So I'm not as concerned about that. The other area would be where your back cinch billets fold over the D-ring. Anywhere you have a piece of leather folding back over itself is going to be a stress area that you're going to want to worry about. I mean, that's about it. Saddle strings are pretty cosmetic. They're a consumable too. I'm sure you guys heard the term of restringing a saddle. That just means somebody's replacing their saddle strings, because these things do wear out, especially if you're using them to tie stuff on, or saddlebags or gear or slickers or whatever in the back. But I guess that's about it for that. Any questions on that stuff?
If you have leather, like I have a saddle it's rough out on the actual seat, the cantle.
Mm-hmm.
You have to clean that or take care of it differently than you do if it's smooth, same thing.
No, it's the same
Like
thing.
brush or anything like that.
I mean, you could loosen up dirt and grime with a brush. It probably, because it's going to be a little harder to get out, because it's rough out. But other than that, you oil it the same, condition it the same. Yeah. And you guys, after you condition your saddle, just beware, you're going to have stains on the inside of your jeans from riding it. It's just part of the deal.